possibly good afternoon for some of you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome, welcome. I'm going to kick things off with some housekeeping while we wait for everyone to come into the room. Thank you very much for joining us today. Our webinar is From Hostess to Managing Partner, Systems that Support Career Growth. I'm Katie Alexander. I'm ZingTrain's community builder, and I host these webinars that we hold monthly. I am here alongside both of ZingTrain's managing partners, Katie Frank and Joanie Hales. And we also have Mara Ferguson, our keynote liaison. She's here behind the scenes. You will see her in chat, and she'll also be helping to collect any questions that you have throughout the webinar. So Joanie, Katie, and I are all coming to you from ZingTrain in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and a special shout out to Mara. She's joining from Saline, Michigan, which is a neighboring town. And we'd love to know where in the world you are coming from. So if you would let us know in the chat if you'd like. You can find the chat at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And if you see any neighbors, be sure to say hi. So before we dive into the content, I have 3 helpful things to let everyone know about. The first one is just the structure of our time. So Katie and Joanie are going to be co-presenting in conversation first, and then we'll leave some time at the end for the Q&A. And we will collect questions throughout the webinar. So you don't have to hold it and try to remember it until the end. There's a Q&A feature at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And so you can just pop the question in there, and then we will hold on to it for you. We will do our best to get to all the questions that we can. If we cannot, and we can provide additional resources, we will do so because we send out a follow-up email after the webinar. The second thing is that there is closed captioning if you would like that for today's presentation. And Mara is going to drop details in the chat if you would like to turn it on. It's, again, a button at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And then the last thing to know is that we are recording this conversation because we will send it out to you in the follow-up email, and also any resources that we might talk about or might get brought up today. And then the recording will also live on our website, where we have lots of other free resources, including recordings of past webinars. That's everything I've got. So I'll pop back in for the Q&A, and I will turn it over to Katie and Joanie to get us started.
All right. Thank you so much, Katie. It's wonderful to be here with you all. I'm Katie Frank, one of the managing partners at ZingTrain. I've worked in our organization for nearly 20 years. I'm excited for our webinar today for a variety of reasons. First, Joanie Hales is ZingTrain's newest co-managing partner with me. And the second part that I'm excited to be sharing with you all is many organizations support employee engagement and development efforts, and unless there are systems in place, these important aspects of retention could become inconsistent in their application depending on who's in the organization. We're excited to share some structures that we have in place that helped both Joanie and I realize our visions to become business owners and managing partners here in our organization. All right, again, we'll share these slides later with you all. So here's what we hope you'll leave the webinar with. So you'll see, we'll talk about some structures that we have in place organizationally that make career growth possible. And then for you all to think about a framework for identifying and strengthening similar systems in your own organization, and exploring ideas and tools that you can implement to create an open and encouraging organization for growth and development. All right. We have in our organization back in, I would say, the mid-90s, our co-founders, Ari Weinswag and Paul Saginaw, drafted a vision that went out 15 years. And part of that vision was to have managing partners. So the businesses would be owned and managed by someone who has chosen to be our partner in that particular venture. A person that has a passion for a particular food or service, and you'll see those details there. Somehow, when I learned about Zingerman's in the early 2000s, I knew that becoming a managing partner was a possibility, which was some aspect of my own personal vision that was exciting and alluring about possibly moving up to Michigan to explore this business that I was just learning about. The other part that you'll see, you can become a partner in two different ways in our organization. And when I say partner, that means being an owner in one of our businesses. You can either start a new business or you can become a partner in an existing business. And so Joanie's going to tell her story in just a moment. But I would say that because we have this vision written and shared, uh, I was just a manager at a bakery in Nashville, Tennessee, and I learned about Zingerman's. And because this vision was written and shared, I knew that becoming an owner was a possibility before I even sought out employment here. And it was a reason why I was one of the many reasons I was excited about exploring this organization further. All right. I'm going to turn things over to Joanie, who's going to get us into her story about how she's arrived at today.
Thank you, Katie. I'm also really excited to be here for many of the same reasons. Getting to join Katie as a managing partner of ZingTrain is quite an honor and something I'm really excited about. And I like getting to share my story. And I like that Katie, once I'm done, is going to share the systems of how other people can help move throughout their organizations. I joked beforehand, I was like, oh, my whole career on one slide. It's kind of nice, but of course, there's a lot that goes into it. But I'll share the highlights with everybody. So I started working in the organization back in 2003. I was going to school for hospitality management, and a friend had just started working at the deli and told me that this company he worked for is going to open up a restaurant. And I thought, well, that's cool. I'll apply there. If it's a new restaurant, we'll all be the new person starting at the same day. So I was part of the opening crew of the Roadhouse, was hired in as a hostess and then also as a server. I thought it was just going to be a job until I found another job. If you've worked in food service before, you know it can be very transient if you want it to be. Of course, it doesn't need to be. But I just thought, the next place I'll go work is, when a friend tells me about another restaurant. And that was kind of the mentality I had for maybe a few weeks or even a couple months. But I very clearly remember in my early days, I got invited to this thing called a huddle. And I went and I sat down and I was like, well, okay, you're going to pay me to be here and you're going to feed me breakfast. This sounds great. And all of a sudden, people were sharing numbers with me. And I will say at the beginning, I didn't really know what these sales numbers were or food cost or labor cost. It kind of all went over my head for a little bit. But there was one huddle very early on that a hot topic came up of tip percentages and tip pools and how we were tipping out the different positions in the restaurant. And being a server and a hostess, I had a lot of thoughts on it. So my ears kind of perked up when this conversation started happening about how we could restructure it. And as the conversation was going, it was decided, okay, we need to take this offline. And the owner was going to be in the subgroup, and so was one of the managers, and so was the accountant. And then someone said, oh, Joni, would you like to be a part of that group too? And I sat there quiet because thinking, well, it's not that common of a name, but there must be another Joni. Like you can't be looking at, 19, 20-year-old me to have some opinions about this. And they were like, no, we want you. And I worked with the owner and one of the managers and the accountant to restructure how we were doing tip percentages. And it really was then that I realized, oh, wait, I have a voice, I have an opinion, and people actually want to know it. And it was really from there that I started to find other ways to engage in the restaurant. I started to think about it not as a job until I found another job, but as a place I really wanted to be. And so I worked frontline for 2 years, serving, hosting. I also then did some bartending and then was the accounting assistant for a little bit. In 2005, there was a job posted for an assistant restaurant manager, and I saw it, and I'd gone to school for hospitality management. I wanted to be in restaurants, but I didn't have any managerial or supervisory experience. So I saw the job posting and then decided, well, I won't apply. I'm not ready. I'm very fortunate that I had a great manager who challenged me and said, why don't you think you're ready? If you read the description and you read some of the things that you're already doing in an informal leadership role, I think you would actually be really good for this. So I applied, went through a long interview process, and very thankful that I got the job and became one of the assistant restaurant managers. I also feel very lucky that my management and leadership career has been in an organization that actually teaches what it means to be a manager and leader. So I was able to learn new skills and actually be taught new skills so I could start to use them. When I was in that role, another kind of turning point in my story, I took over our special dinners. So special dinners and events that the Roadhouse would host. So we would have a guest speaker or a guest chef come in and, everyone would eat at the same time. And Ari, our co-founder, was always part of those dinners. And he would ask me, like, hey, you're managing this. At the end of the meal, would you thank everybody for coming and then tell them about the next dinner coming up next month? And to his face, I would always say, yeah, sure, I'll do that. But I was terrified of public speaking, speaking in front of a group. There's no way I could have successfully done that. So while I said yes to him, when it would come time at the end of the meal, I would make sure that I was downstairs in the offices of the restaurant, or I'd be at a table talking to other customers. So, like, he couldn't possibly pull me away from them. And it would basically force him to thank everybody for coming and tell them about the next dinner. And I would like to think that I was like pulling this over on Ari for a few months or so, but I think he actually caught on pretty quickly and said, well, this is going to be part of the job. I really think you should connect with ZingTrain just to get more comfortable standing in front of this group thanking people. So that was another turning point or kind of key point of like I reluctantly said yes to that, but I did connect with ZingTrain. And what I realized and the connection with ZingTrain was not moving here full time. It was just do some talking out in the community, maybe teach a couple of workshops a few times a year. It wasn't going to be anything intense or full time. But what I did realize is it wasn't that I was afraid of public speaking. I didn't like speaking in public when I wasn't passionate or excited about what I was talking about, or if I felt unsure about what I was talking about. I realized I actually had a deep love and excitement about sharing what Zingerman's does with other people. And I actually love public speaking when it's about something I care about. And I care deeply about Zingerman's. So it became this natural thing where I started working with ZingTrain more while still working at the Roadhouse. So you can see in 2010, I became the catering and marketing manager, which is really just I left the floor of the restaurant and focused solely on catering and marketing while still working with ZingTrain on an occasional basis. 2014 in 2014, I'd been in the organization for 11 years. It's not the 7 year itch, but I feel like 11 is also a key point that people talk about, like 11 years into something. I was finding myself burnt out a little bit, not as excited about things. There was just this turning point happening at the Roadhouse in the restaurant of the culture moving in a direction that I didn't necessarily want to see it going in. And I had reached a point where like I was ready to quit, not throw my hands up and storm out, but just I don't know if I'm contributing in the ways that I want to. And when I was sharing this, because we have a culture of being very open, you can share when you're going through a hard time. I was talking with our HR rep who said, I hear everything you're saying, and I encourage you to attend LDP, which is our leadership development program. And it's a program that grows leadership skills and it brings leaders from across the organization. And I said, yes, I'll attend it, but didn't necessarily have high hopes of what it was going to do. But in that 3, 4 month program, I actually realized how much I did care about the culture. And I cared so much that walking away wasn't going to make me feel good and wasn't going to be leaving the Roadhouse in a place where I wanted it to be. So through the program, writing a vision of how I saw myself helping even more, working with ZingTrain even more, growing my leadership skills, it encouraged me to reinvest. So while I went from being ready to walk away, it was actually, no, I'm planting even more roots here. Like this is where I want to stay. And so worked on continuing to build the culture that would be really strong. In 2016, there was a full-time trainer position posted at ZingTrain, and it was a hard decision to apply because I loved the Roadhouse so much, but I was feeling that pull of I love sharing the Zingerman story even more. So I applied, got the position to join ZingTrain full time. I spent, several years after 2016 getting comfortable in the job, learning what it means to be a full-time trainer, traveling, learning even more of our content on a deeper level. And then it was around 2020 that I started to think about partnership. And the partnership originally kind of came up from writing visions when I would do what we call the hot pen technique, where I would sit down and just write whatever would come to my mind of where I saw myself in the future, managing partner kind of kept coming up. And I would maybe write it in one sentence one year, and then the next year it became like a few sentences, and then it became a paragraph. And Katie and I started maybe more seriously talking about it in the end of 2022. So I was thinking about it for a few years, brought it to Katie. We spent a year or so having conversations between us about, is this something we both want? How would we work together? Neither of us goes into a partnership lightly. It is something that we're both committed to and, coming back to the table with if when it's working well, when it's not working. So we wanted to make sure that it was going to work for both of us and for the team. So it was just lots of conversations like that over a year or so. Then we brought it to the rest of the team, and then it was very exciting. In July of this year, got the official formal slash informal thumbs up from all of the other managing partners in the organization to join officially as a managing partner. So it's been 22 years in the making. I think going back to the start of the story, when I first started, I never intended on staying as long as I have. I really did think it would just be a job or a stepping stone into something else. And now I obviously can't imagine working anywhere else. I don't want to work anywhere else. I've spent over half of my life working at Zingerman's. I look forward to being able to say a third of my life, or well, whatever makes it go up higher. Two-thirds of my life, I guess, would be the next one working here. So I love what I do. I love getting to talk with folks like you all who are joining us on this webinar and in all of our trainings. So thank you. You all are the what make this possible. So I have a deep appreciation for you all. But I think with that, I'll turn it over to the other person I have deep appreciation for, Katie.
Thank you very much, Joanie. It's always a pleasure hearing your story. And I think one of the things that, as we were planning the webinar, there's a lot of things that struck me. One thing that kind of came to me, though, was that out in the world, especially with a lot of like Harvard Business Review articles, which I really appreciate, or like things on LinkedIn or on social channels where it's like the 5 things you need to do to like be successful, or the 6 things to consider for X, Y, and Z. Of course, we're going to give you like a list of things to consider today. And also, what I love about how the slide is organized and then the words and meaning behind all these words with Joanie's story is that Joanie said it's 22 years in the making. These things don't happen quickly. And even in our conversations, started in 2022, came to fruition in 2025. Ari, our co-founder, talks about these different natural laws of business, and success takes a lot longer than you think, is one of them. And so I just want to underscore that with a lot of intention and strong systems, these things take time. And as you know, in relationship, establishing trust with someone is not something that you can do quickly or like have on a specific timeline. So to me, it's just like a confluence of like having some structures, having trust, and continuing to work on things, and then knowing this is not like some quick process. So I want to make sure that to underline that. All right, let's get into some of the systems that have supported Joanie, and then I'll integrate certain things that I felt like have been supportive also, like as I was on this journey back in between like 2015 and 2017. So the systems in place. So we talk about having some orientation. All of our staff go through the same orientation. And in there, one of our co-founders teaches that Welcome to Zingerman's class and talks about possibly being on the path to partnership. Anyone that works in the organization is on the path to partnership. And you might like roll your eyes, but I will say that as 2 of us here that have been on the path to partnership, and we are both married to, my husband was a former managing partner in the organization, and Joanie's husband is a current managing partner in the organization, that knowing that you can be an owner is from early on in your tenure in the organization, changes how you think. It really does, because it's something that like I had never thought of myself as an owner. Anyway, so like if you see it, then you can become it. And then when Ari and Paul wrote that vision that we shared some excerpts from for 2009 about having managing partners, these are things that were stated. All right. In terms of some systems that help support this next point, there was a job posting that Joanie didn't necessarily think she was ready for, and she had a supportive manager that she was having a check-in with that encouraged her. So I think there are a variety of junctures in both of our paths where people have encouraged us to stretch outside of our comfort zone. And so, having people around you that believe in you also is very important. Posting jobs internally also allows people to stretch themselves a little bit. Maybe they might not be quite ready for a position, but they can interview, they can gain more skills that way. And so it's posting jobs lets you see as a supervisor who's interested, who might be wanting more in their career. Maybe there's not an avenue for some of those conversations, but if they can apply for that job, then that might be a way to see who might be interested in doing more. All right. Now, our internal leadership development program happened for both of us around very kind of critical junctures in our professional lives. So Joanie mentioned possibly wanting to leave the organization, and the leadership development program helped her kind of like re-up her commitment to the organization and seeing, and we've talked about this, like Joanie saw, like, I can be part of the solution here as opposed to just being frustrated with how the current state was going. And I think that's a powerful shift. And like, let's let somebody else handle this versus, oh, I can be part of solving some of these cultural challenges that the Roadhouse was having. And then for me, when I was in LDP, it was like, okay, I was thinking about starting a family. I was wondering, okay, how can I make sure that the role that I was in at the bakehouse was going to be covered if I ended up on a maternity leave? And so part of the vision that I wrote in LDP was about making sure that my position was covered. What I didn't realize, though, is that there was a ZingTrain job that was posted the same time I was in the leadership development program. And while I thought I was writing a vision for making sure the bake shop was covered in my absence for maternity leave, it was really like, oh, there's this other position open that I transitioned to. So you don't ever know when you like put things out into the universe, like how things can conspire. So having development opportunities for staff, really critical. And then personal visioning has been critical and is critical in our organization. And we use it in a variety of ways for small changes, for transition periods for people. If folks are feeling funky on their job and like, okay, well, where do you see yourself? Like, what are the aspects of your work that you really enjoy? What do you see yourself doing in the future? I think all of us at ZingTrain and many people within the organization, personal visioning has helped us really codify like what's important, where do we see ourselves, and then the beauty of drafting a vision and then sharing it. So hopefully having supportive supervisory support around you or other people that can help champion you is how can I help make that vision become a reality? So there's like the individual that drafts the vision that's got work to do. And then there's also sharing that vision in a supportive environment that allows people to help that, plant that seed and help water it and see it grow. All right. And then having a path to partnership structure lets you know, okay, at these specific junctures, this is what happens next. And the path to partnership is a very self-directed activity. Activity doesn't quite do it justice because it is a whole lot of work. And part of that work is the emotional work of like looking inside on like, why do I really want to do this? What is this about? How can I like sell myself to both the people in the business I want to become a partner in, and then also all of these 21 partners that we have in the organization? Why would they want to have me join the group? So it is a really introspective time. My path to partnership took, I think I started it, I started having conversations about it back in like 2011, but I kind of officially started the path in like 2015, and I got confirmed as a partner in 2018. So it takes a while, but there were some pauses in there that were really critical that I was like, I need to shore a couple things up before I continue to move forward. So anyway, having these steps and knowing what to expect, there's always going to be some unexpected parts, but we'll share the path to partnership steps in the follow-up, as well as some prerequisites. But having that structure was really critical to know, what can I be working for if this is where I'm headed? All right. So we talked a lot about what structures we have in place in our organization. You might be thinking, well, how does this relate to me? So things to consider in your own organization. When Joanie and I had long been in conversations, and at some point it was like appropriate for us to start socializing this idea with our team at ZingTrain. And we use a process called bottom line change in our organization when we're introducing a change. And part of that process, two main components. The first is we share compelling reasons for the change, and then we draft a little vision of what success is going to look like once that change has been implemented. And we certainly did that in this case. And the team was looking to me as Maggie, our founding partner at ZingTrain, retired from her full-time work in July of 2020. So I had been a solo managing partner from July of 2020 all the way through to just a couple of weeks ago in 2025. And so I have obviously a large responsibility to our team, and like sharing some of my thought process about how did I go on this path to having conversations with Joanie. What does the business need? And what questions does the team have? And so by using the bottom line change process, it was helpful to share some of the reasons that were really important to me to have Joanie join me as a managing partner. And then we built a lot of opportunities in a formalized way for the team to ask questions of clarification and give feedback. And the way that looks, if anyone's been to one of our seminars before, we have something called open forum, which is where like Joanie and I would share. We would leave the room. This would be part of like a half-day meeting or an all-day meeting, and then the team would bring questions forward. And some we didn't have answers for in the moment, but we were able to get back to the folks on our team. But if folks don't feel like they know why something's happening, and they don't have a chance to ask questions of clarification, then they can feel really stuck. And then things can start to fester a little bit. It's not like a foolproof. It's not like everyone's like, oh, like we're ready to have a party. It's making sure that we have these structures in place so that those questions can come out. And that's just part of leadership, where you're answering questions that people have and then seeing where's their nervousness, where is their excitement, and so forth. And then acknowledge and address the shift in the group dynamic during and after a transition. We had a large cultural earthquake, I would say, at ZingTrain in 2022 that was a bit unexpected for me. And also, we have a lot of longtime staff that work here. And we had during that time, as we were like hiring more folks to bring back seminars in person. And we had one person leave to go back to grad school. And so we had, I think, 5 new people join our team of 10. So we were like doubling the size of our team. And that had some growing pains. And so part of, I feel like, another leadership responsibility is when there is a cultural shift, the best we can do is to acknowledge when it's happening and then start to work collectively on how we're going to create the culture that we want. So I wouldn't say going back, because then that's like not honoring the new and different life that we've created on our team. And instead, like, what parts aren't working, what are working. And so I have found that while tricky and feeling a little uncomfortable, acknowledging some of these shifts has helped us get to a better place. And we did some completion exercises around, like, what did we miss about how things were going in a certain time frame? What are we hopeful for in the future? And that, coupled with having a vision of success for ZingTrain in 2028, part of that vision was having a second managing partner. Part of my vision about being a partner that I drafted in 2015 was that at some point I would have another managing partner to work with. Anyhow, so hopefully that's helpful structurally. And then it looks like we've got some questions in the chat. So how does the internal leadership development program look like, and how is it structured? This was something that was created from our former HR director, and her name was Patty McGraw. So Patty was in conversation with Maggie Bayless, our founding partner at ZingTrain, and then Amy Emberling, the partner at the Bakehouse. You know, they were identifying, gosh, we've got a lot of great supports for our frontline staff. And when they join, we have a thorough orientation process, and there's not a bunch of support for managers, and managers are expected to do a lot in our organization. And so Patty, along with Maggie and Amy, developed this leadership development program that was really, how can we bring some outside source material around leadership, around followership, some of Ari's writings, and really kind of curating what are some areas that could help our managers. And so it has evolved. I was in the first leadership development program back in 2011. I think it was 2011 was our pilot. I was with Joanie's husband in that pilot. And it's evolved over time. So, and Joanie, you can help me. Some of the topics have evolved over time, but let me see how I can do on, and maybe we can also put them into chat. So we have an orientation for the LDP, and then we get into, Ari talks about, well, can you just speak to it?
Yes,
I don't try to like fumble through it.
Well, then, yes, I would love to. So LDP, Katie and I just said, we both were graduates of it. Katie then led it for many years, and then I took over leading it in 2020, I believe it was. It was cut short a little bit because, you know, it was happening in February and March. But now it is the orientation session. We do a session with Ari on the organizational ecosystem. So what are the different components that build a successful ecosystem of the organization and the people who work within it? There is one on servant leadership and stewardship. We talk about emotional intelligence and followership in one session. We will do time management. We have one on performance management and coaching, and then one on inclusive leadership and some diversity, equity, and inclusion training. I think that covered 8 of them. I saw Kelly on here too, who's also in the LDP recently, who can add if I missed one of them. But
Well,
I think I got them.
Well, the other thing that's really helpful is these buddy groups that meet in
Mhm.
between the sessions. And I think, is it every 3 weeks that LDP happens?
2 to 3.
Okay. And then the other part is that at the end, the last culminating session, folks have been working on a change project throughout LDP, and they present their change project as well as their personal vision of success to the group. And I think that's really always a very meaningful session. And you have the support of folks that are also feeling vulnerable about not only trying a change and is this going to work, and then also putting yourself out there with a personal vision. All right. And it looks like, thank you, Monica. It didn't feel great at the time with the earthquake, but we did get through it. And thank you, Kelly, for putting your thoughts in there about LDP. So anyhow, love to answer any other questions that folks have. I know that some of the things that we're sharing are kind of like large, and it's like, how do I think about this? But making sure that some of the leaders might have in their heads, like how they want to support the team that they have, and getting some of these things documented and shared can help others know what's possible. And I think that was really critical, as I mentioned, knowing that being an owner was a possibility. Even in my first interview, I was like, but I'm not rich. Like, I don't have money to own a business. And I was speaking with Amy at the Bakehouse where I first interviewed, and she's like, oh, money's the easiest thing to get. Now it's hard to pay back, but money is one of the easiest things to get. And I'm like, oh, all right, well, maybe I could do this. So anyhow, can't underscore enough the importance of having things written down and shared with folks. All right.
We do have a couple of questions that I can ask now. So I think these are for either of you are welcome to answer this next one. This is from Kala. They write, I have been involved in mission and vision statements for organizations in the past, but haven't thought to apply this to individuals before. So thank you for sharing that component. Do you have guided templates to assist folks just getting started with personal visioning?
We have so many resources to help with the personal visioning. It would be where to start. I think that we can certainly send some information in the follow-up. But the answer is, I mean, yes. I will say one of the things that helped me when I was learning personal visioning the most was other people sharing their visions with me, getting to see where my manager wanted to go or one of my peers and where they wanted to be in 2 years. It made me feel more free to write where I wanted to go. So yes, we'll send resources that can guide people along in writing it, or you could attend one of our virtual trainings that walks people through the process. And a step is also sharing it.
Anything to add, Katie?
No, I think we often talk about well, practicing first yourself and then teaching visioning, as a way to also get better at it. And yeah, we'll put some personal visioning resources in the follow-up.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Thank
and
you.
Then speaking to onboarding.
Yes, Monica has a question about onboarding. How do you bring new people into the fold and help them feel a sense of belonging early on?
I'm going to talk about some real basic things and then also some larger things. I started at the bakery. So my path here, I started at the bakehouse, was a retail manager for 6.5 years before joining ZingTrain in 2011. We have something as a part of our service recipe called the 10-4 rule, which is at 10 feet, you make eye contact and smile, and at 4 feet, we verbally greet. Now, if anyone's worked in a bakery before, I started December 1st, 2005. In December, it's bonkers at a bakery because we're baking for mail order who does 50% of their sales in 8 weeks' time. And we're also providing bread for grocery stores and cafes and stores in town and within, like about a 60-mile radius. It's bonkers at a bakery in December. And I remember coming into work and like where you put like where your locker is and then where the shop was, I needed to walk through our bread department to get to our bake shop. And people would make eye contact with me and smile, and they would say good morning. And I kept thinking, when are people going to be in a bad mood? Like I kept thinking this surely can't like go on for longer, They kept looking excited when I would come through, when it's not like I'm so exciting, but it was just like this 10-4 rule helped make me feel very welcomed and excited to see people in other parts of the building. So 10-4, I would say that. The other part is we have a training plan. We call it a training passport that every new hire gets. And that welcome to Zingerman's class that Ari, our co-founder, teaches is a part of that training plan. By having a clear picture of what success looks like when you're hired, it was revelatory for me. When I was hired, here's your training passport, go through it. There's day 7 expectations, day 30 expectations, and day 60 expectations. So if I wanted to work ahead, then I could see what was needed, or I needed a class, or, oh, I didn't even think about learning product knowledge about X, Y, and Z that I needed to know, but it was all right there. There were some things that were crossed out. It was I don't want you to think that it was extremely so polished. There were some things that needed updating. So just know that we do that too. And by having that training plan, it was people thought about having me join the team. And it wasn't exclusive to me. That is for everybody that joins. So I think having a training plan, meeting with people about it, once every couple of weeks when you're new, getting feedback about how things are going. Those are all things that, like, of course it makes sense, but making time for that really helps folks feel welcomed. Joanie, what were some of the things that helped you feel welcomed here?
The one that stands out to me was having like a mentor or we used to call them road guides at the roadhouse. So yes, you're hired in as a new employee. You have your manager or supervisor you can go to, but then you would also have a peer who had been there longer who could just help answer questions. Sometimes when you're new, it can be intimidating to ask questions of your manager. It can be a lot less to ask questions of another server or another frontline employee at times. So I think that was always a really nice thing. It was just another way to make a connection with somebody more quickly, rather than like, oh, I hope I just meet a friend while I'm here. It's like, no, let's eat lunch together, or let's take our break together. I'll give you a tour of the building. And I think that is a nice way to make people feel welcome. They just have that other person that they can reach out to.
I'll also share that we've got a virtual workshop that's 2.5 hours that basically goes through how we structure our training plans, that we can include in the follow-up. And then more in depth is our 2-day transformative training tools seminar that goes through that with more depth. Anyhow, we'll include those resources in the follow-up.
Joanie, to your point about having like a point person, I was remembering when I started working at ZingTrain, this was back in 2018. We're a smaller team. There were probably 13 or 14 people on the team at that point. And I remember there was somehow there was an expectation sort of created that like I could go to anybody for help and everyone was willing. And so that was a really good feeling of like, I don't always have to go to the same person. Like people are very willing to answer questions and sort of like form those peer-to-peer bonds. There is one more question. Before we get to that question, this is sort of piggybacking off of where we are just at. Corinne is wondering, what are some ways that you would recommend helping people feel welcome in a virtual environment?
Well, we are an in-person environment, so I will do my best at some ideas. When we were remote for from March of April of 2020 through June of 2021. We have our weekly meeting. We call it a huddle. So we would see each other. And the other part, beyond the huddle, a few times during that more than a year, we would come together for if you're in all other parts of the country, this wouldn't work, but a couple times we would get together and like have reason for a celebration, or we would have cupcakes together. If you are all virtual, is there a shared vision that you have that you're working towards? Do you know how people like to be recognized? The part that was hardest for me in that time when we were all remote was the informal conversations that would typically happen in an office setting, in between meetings or at the end of a long week, or, hey, I'm going to go get some coffee. And so figuring out ways to like co-work together, like we're going to be working, but like, let's all get on a Zoom. And so it can almost be like we're working in the coffee shop together, but at least, hey, if I've got a question, I'm not only in isolation, but we can have some coffee talk a bit. That would be a suggestion. Knowing how folks like to be recognized is really important. And then figuring out how can we have some of those informal ways to connect that isn't like, this is our meeting and this is what we're going to cover in the meeting. And then the other part is making sure we always end our meetings with appreciations, which is like, what do I appreciate about other folks? Because I think one of the challenges, obviously, with remote work is that like you aren't seen or validated. Like, how are you being appreciative to the people that you're working with? So building in structures in place so that you can make sure that you're recognizing the folks that you're working with. Okay,
Thanks,
I'm just reading
Katie.
this question here. How can we
Yeah.
customize the employee development or career growth support structure in such cases? What if not one structure works for all? Well, there isn't ever going to be like one leadership program that's going to like fit everybody. I would say thinking about what do you want folks to know or to be able to do at the end of a leadership program? Start there. We always are big on like starting with objectives. And the customization part is teaching a tool about visioning and then having them work on their personal vision, because that is directed from their internal compass about where they want to go and what success looks like for them. So to me, what I love about our leadership development program is here's some content, some things to consider, some leadership approaches. How does that relate to you? So it's always like, here's some content. How does it relate to you? How do you see yourself in that? What are the expectations in your job? And then where do you see yourself going? So it's providing, like, I hadn't done that much learning since grad school when I took LDP. So I, as someone that runs a learning organization, I love learning. So it was like really energizing for me to like learn these new things. And everyone's going to take different things from from the content that's shared. So I would say be firm in like what content you want to get across, and make sure that the application, a lot of the learning that happens is in between sessions in those buddy groups, as well as like drafting a vision that is in a supportive environment. So I don't know, Joan, if there's other things you want to share.
I think the power of visioning, again, where they want to go, and then you start to customize it. I think I just reiterate what Katie said. It's not a one size fits all. I mean, it's kind of a one size fits one, and it is just lots of conversations. What do you need? How can I help to help you reach this? Once you know where they want to go, then I think that's where the customization comes into play. If you don't know where people want to go, you can send them to something or put some structures together, but it's just being in conversation with people.
Yeah.
And then
the
figure it
other,
out.
the other thing is that it's just like watching a movie at different junctures. Like you get different things out of it, or like reading an article, listening to a podcast, depending on the space and time where you are in your own life. Like you're going to get different things out of it when you are going through it. So that's why I feel like that all is going to be variable, how the people are coming into a learning environment. If you can have some structure on what do we want to share, what do we want folks to get out of it, where can we build in places for them to do personal reflection and development for themselves, that can be a really fertile ground for really wonderful growth opportunities.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around a couple minutes after our scheduled end time. I am going to wrap things up and then throw it back to Joanie and Katie if they have any sort of like closing things that they want to say that haven't been said. We are talking about like really a very cohesive look at a lot of the systems and structures and cultural elements that we have in place at Zingerman. So it's great. And I just want to give space to like, if there's any way that you would like to sort of wrap it up. So before I do that, thank you both for spending the time to talk about this and share your story and be managing partners of ZingTrain. I feel very lucky. Mara, thank you for being behind the scenes and helping people out and getting the questions our way. We would love to hear what everyone thought of today's conversation, because we do these monthly and we want to do things that you want to engage with. So we have a quick poll if you're running tight on time, just to let us know, rate your experience 0 to 10. 0 is awful and 10 is highly recommend. And then if you have a bit more time and you'd like to give us some feedback on exactly what you liked or what you would like to see in the future, Mara will drop a link in the chat. And then again, just to reiterate that we will send out a recording of the webinar tomorrow. So look for that in your inbox. Joanie and Katie.
Just thank you. I said it earlier. I mean, ZingTrain wouldn't be ZingTrain without all of you who are joining us for these types of things and all of our trainings. I think we're all really lucky. We get to work with each other and we get to work with great people. So thank you all.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Please reach out with other questions. We're happy to be in conversation.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, all.
Bye.